Stephen Colbert is going to be replacing David Letterman. Conservatives are flipping out. David Letterman has been the host of The Late Show with David Letterman on CBS since 1993. And previous to that, he hosted the late night, or just, I guess, late night, not the late night with David Letterman on NBC from 1982 to 1993. He announced he will be retiring in 2015. And immediately the speculation started about who might replace him. Very quickly, Stephen Colbert was considered the top candidate. That was eventually confirmed by CBS. He will continue on the Colbert Report on Comedy Central until 2015, and then will switch over to hosting David Letterman's current show. This is fascinating what's going on. David Letterman is mostly non-political on his program, although he has made statements in the last few years that show he leans left, right? He has made a few statements against the Iraq War. He's made some statements that show he's clearly no conservative, clearly no fan of George W. Bush. And now, Colbert, of course, plays a right-wing character on his program. It's obviously a liberal satire of conservative ideology, and right-wingers are just flipping out about the choice by CBS to hire Colbert. Rush Limbaugh was asked about it. Here's what he had to say.
I'll give you the short version. CBS has just declared war on the heartland of America. There is no longer is comedy going to be a covert assault on traditional American values, conservatives. Now it's just wide out in the open. What this hire means is a redefinition of what is funny and a redefinition of what is comedy. And they're blowing up the 11:30 format under the guise that the world's changing. And people don't want the kind of comedy that Carson gave us, or even Letterman. They don't want that anymore.
It's also funny that he talks about how this isn't Johnny Carson. He kind of remembers very, very in a romanticized way the days of Johnny Carson. Johnny Carson was a liberal, by the way. And also, Stephen Colbert's life story is pretty conservative. He's married, been married 21 years, no scandals that we know of, unlike both David Letterman and Rush Limbaugh, which of course are pro-family, right? This is what they say. They're not supposed to have these kind of interpersonal scandals. He's a family man with 3 children. He's probably, I would guess, the first practicing Christian to be hosting a late night show. He teaches Sunday school at his Catholic church. Bill O'Reilly, though, not too happy about this. Bill O'Reilly also upset about Stephen Colbert being chosen to replace David Letterman. Here's what Bill O'Reilly had to say.
But Mr. Colbert is a deceiver. I strongly believe in fighting for equality and also believe institutional bias should be against the law. What I oppose is government trying to impose equality because every human being is different. Maybe Colbert should take a look at China and the former Soviet Union to see just how the imposition of equality really works.
How does that even make sense? He wants institutional bias to be against the law, but he doesn't want government imposing equality. How does institutional bias become against the law without the government creating that law? Is it magic? Is it, how would Bill O'Reilly explain that? He's essentially saying, there should really be a law against that, but I am opposed to the government making laws like that. I just don't understand it. And Ben Shapiro, who has been a guest on this program, his thoughts on this were completely laughable. He says that what Colbert does in character amounts to, I'm not kidding here, conservative blackface, which is, quote, racist against conservatives. He says this routine, in which Colbert plays at conservatism in order to portray it as unendingly ugly, should be labeled for what it is: vile political blackface. When Colbert plays Colbert, it's not merely mockery or satire or spoof. It's something far nastier. And here's where it goes completely off the rails. Blackface, which has an ugly history dating back to at least the 15th century, according to historian John Strasbaugh, was used to portray demeaning and horrifying stereotypes of blacks. And this is precisely what Colbert does with regard to politics. He engages in conservative face. I don't even know what to say. It's just amazing. What I did think of, though, is this. Since when does conservative right-wing satire and parody even work. I would argue that conservative ideology at its base just doesn't lend itself to the type of humor that is on Saturday Night Live, that is The Daily Show, The Colbert Report, and even the type of humor that is late night comedy, stand-up television type variety shows that we're talking about here. There are conservative comedians. I've never encountered one that I find genuinely funny. And remember that half-hour news hour on Fox News, which was supposed to be the right-wing response to programs like The Daily Show? It's on YouTube. You can find some clips. It's pretty heinous. Ben Shapiro is right about one thing, though. It is basically impossible to distinguish between the stuff Colbert says and the stuff that actual conservatives say. For example, when Glenn Beck said, when I see a 9/11 victim family on television or whatever, I'm just like, oh, shut up. I'm so sick of them because they're always complaining. That's an actual quote. Ronald Reagan, quote, facts are stupid things. Todd Aiken, if it's a legitimate rape, the female body has a way to try to shut that whole thing down. Rush Limbaugh, feminism was established so as to allow unattractive women access to the mainstream of society. And then here's one of my favorites, Bill O'Reilly, after he went to a restaurant in Harlem. And I couldn't get over the fact that there was no difference between Sylvia's restaurant and any other restaurant in New York City. I mean, it was exactly the same. Even though it's run by blacks, primarily black patronship, there wasn't one person in Sylvia's who was screaming, MFer, I want more iced tea. And lastly, Ann Coulter, I think women should be armed but should not vote. Women have no capacity to understand how money is earned. They have a lot of ideas on how to spend it. It's always more money on education, more money on childcare, more money on daycare. Remember, the culture wars that the conservatives always talk about are wars that only conservatives are waging. Outside of that, it's the natural shift of public opinion towards things like marriage equality, reducing wealth inequality, all that stuff. That is not a culture war. The culture war is what is being waged